The warmest of greetings, Vincent and fellow classmates. Welcome to week 9. My name is Nasir Islam. As the omnipresent beast that is climate change continues to wreak havoc across the planet, there is a pertinent need to implement sound and pragmatic environmental management strategies to respond and limit the dire consequences. However, environmental systems are inherently complex, and hence the implementation of such plans can be arduous. Stakeholder engagement has been identified as a path forward to reduce and understand the complexities of environmental system and therefore increase the likelihood of successful implementation of environmental policies. To further understand the role of stakeholder engagement can play in the management of environmental systems, the Sundarbans mangrove forest is analyzed. The Sundarbans is the world's largest contiguous mangrove forest. Covering an area of over 10,000 kilometers square, it spans across the coast of Bangladesh in India. It has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site due to its outstanding universal value. And this is overtly apparent when considering the abundance of ecosystem services the Sundarbans provide, such as timber, honey, animal and fishery stocks, cultural services such as tourism, and regulatory services such as coastal protection. Despite the globally recognized importance of the Sundarbans, this unique ecosystem is in decline, with the forest shrinking upwards of 16 kilometers square annually. The Sundarbans ecosystem services directly or indirectly support the livelihoods of the 3.5 million people who live in the region. With the Sundarbans in decline, millions of people may be displaced. The cause of the decline is multifaceted, but the lion's share of the blame has been attributed to inept policy implementation. Environmental management strategies at the Sundarbans have been heavily criticized for a single disciplinary approach, where policy measures and implementation are state-controlled and hierarchical in nature. Engaging local stakeholders for co-management systems, which instigates a collaboration between government bodies and local stakeholders, can potentially allow for flexible policy measures that can be adapted to changes in the environmental conditions. To address these concerns and combat the decline of the Sundarbans, the Integrated Resource Management Plan was formulated. It contains resource-specific objectives and management guidelines along with monitoring and evaluation criteria. The plan prescribes 10 strategic management programs: habitat protection, wildlife sanctuaries management, sustainable forest management, food security and wetland management, climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, ecotourism, facilities development, conservation outreach, conservation research, participatory monitoring and capacity development, and finally, administration and budget. Most importantly, the plan is characterized by a co-management approach that seeks to incorporate resource users in its decision-making processes, as well as to increase accountability and sharing of responsibility. The expected result is a more equitable and sustainable resource conservation backed by resource users and management authorities. The co-management system is characterized by a 3-tier structure. The 3 tiers are Village Conservation Forum, or the VCF, at the community level. The VCS representatives group at the next tier in the People's Forum, the PF, at the forest range level. And finally, a co-management committee which allows for collaboration of a multitude of stakeholders to identify problems and implement dynamic management solutions at the Sundarbans. This broad-range collaboration effort is an example of a transdisciplinary approach that requires continuous collaboration for a complex, uncertain, and heterogeneous systems like the Sundarbans mangrove forest. While there are clear frameworks and guidelines for this type of transdisciplinary approach, there have been several issues that has hindered its successful implementation. The Village Conservation Forum, which forms the foundation of the overall co-management structure, is still very immature. Resource users are not yet fully represented in the VCFs and PFs, and hence they cannot adequately voice their concerns about issues relevant to them. Moreover, VCFs and PFs have limited organizational capacity, and processes, such as coordination and communication, are not yet fully functioning. There is also a limited understanding about co-management and the expected roles of different co-management tiers from both local community groups and the government Bangladesh Forestry Department workers. In general, there is a strong desire amongst the local stakeholders to engage in the sustainable management of the mangrove forest. However, a recent study has shown that most resource users do not feel they have a voice in management policy. The lack of successful implementation has been attributed to lack of infrastructure, low education levels amongst resource users, rampant poverty, which is causing an over-dependence on the Sundarbans ecosystem services, and most notably, a culture of corruption amongst government officials who engage in practices such as accepting bribes from resource users so they can circumvent management procedures and resource limits. For successful incorporation of transdisciplinary approaches, agency and empowerment must be provided to resource users to enable active participation. Education and infrastructure are essential, as greater awareness of the value of the Sundarbans would assist in improving stakeholder attitudes towards sustainable management. Furthermore, the socio-economic conditions that foster corruption must be critically examined for it to be expunged from the management culture. Some discussion questions to conclude. What are some other examples where resource users were engaged as an active stakeholders in environmental co-management plans? What were some of the complexities involved? Transdisciplinary approaches require engagement with a broad spectrum of stakeholders. The political elite have been accused of having greater influence than poorer local resource users. What are some strategies to ensure stakeholder engagement is more equitable? Is stakeholder engagement essential for formation of environmental management plans? Do you think instead that a single disciplinary approach based on the best available science and environmental practice is a viable alternative? Thank you. I look forward to engaging with you all in the discussion forums.